Hello and welcome to another episode of the Aranax podcast, the podcast that focuses on the transformation and development in the shipping and maritime space. I'm Craig Eason. I'm the editor and owner of Fathom World, and I'm host of this podcast. And with me for this episode, I have Torghatten from Torghatten Nord, a ship owner in the north of Norway, Gjermund Johansen, who's been on an episode previously from Norwegian Ship Design, and Peter van der Graaf from Lloyd's Register, because in this episode we're going to be talking about a recent AIP for a vessel that Torghatten Nord has been developing to run around the islands up in the north of Norway. So I'm going to start here by just briefly asking Torghild, if you can you just explain for our listeners a little bit about Torghatten Nord and these two vessels that you are planning to build to put into operation around the north of the country?
Yes, thank you for inviting me to this podcast. Torghatten Nord is a shipping company operating on the Norwegian coastline with ferries and catamarans. The main office is in Tromsø, north of the Polar Circle. We are fully owned by Torghatten, which is the group name, and one of three shipping companies within the group. And we are operating some around 50 vessels now on the Norwegian coast, stretching from Bergen in the south and up to Finnmark County in the north. And we have all the ferry traffic in and out of the island of Lofoten. And this new project is also part of that, because it's a ferry service going from Bodø to the Lofoten Islands that we now are preparing for two hydrogen vessels.
These two vessels that you've asked Gjermund and his team to design, they're going to be hydrogen powered, but it's a contract that you won from the Norwegian Road Administration.
Yes.
I guess to an extent, this is a level of security that you've got, because one of the questions we often see around the industry is how quick this transition to a clean fuel can happen, whatever clean fuel that industry is going to look at. But here you've got a contract for two vessels that is focused on a fixed contract. So you know you're going to build these vessels, you know they're going to go into operation. So that's a kind of a level of security for you for this business.
Yeah, exactly. It's a tender from the Norwegian road authorities. It has been prepared for 3-4 years now, with different conferences and discussions, and the final competition was in 2021. And we won, and we got the contract, or we signed the contract in January this year. And it is for two hydrogen-powered vessels. 85% of the energy should come from green hydrogen.
They're going to be from the start, as soon as the vessels are in operation. Is that the contract that you've got, that they have to be supplied with green hydrogen, not blue hydrogen or hydrogen from natural gas, for example, but real green hydrogen?
It's green hydrogen, and we have a starting date from October 1st, 2025, and it is correct, as you mentioned, that this is a firm contract and a firm project. It's not any kind of experimentation at all. We have to start, and we have an obligation to start on October 1st, 2025.
Have you secured the fuel already? Have you been looking into where you're going to get the fuel from?
Yeah, we have been working on that since the tender came out. We have not finalized it yet, but we are in the final stage of signing a contract for the production of hydrogen, which will take place locally in around the Bodø area.
Gilman, when we look at this ship design, these vessels have, well, the company like this have been operating vessels up in the north of Norway for many, many years, and they're accustomed to the harshness of the environment. Could you tell me a little bit about the design and how you built this design to both be novel and take care of that harsh environment operating conditions that they're going to have?
Thanks again for inviting me to the podcast. I must say that we have been working with Torghatten and Torghatten Nord for many years, and we are very we have a very close dialogue, close development of these projects. So we have the first-hand experience on the ship owner side on a daily basis during the development. Of course, it's harsh environment. It's north of the polar circle, and it's the Norwegian most exposed ferry crossing, and even the longest one. It's 100 kilometers in open water from Bodø to the islands. The first challenge, of course, the harshness is kind of more traditional, but the main focus during the tender has been the hydrogen system and to build the vessel around a safe and cost-effective hydrogen system. It's difficult to see pictures in a podcast, but for the one.
Well, if you go online, you can sure find the pictures that are coming. But tell me a little bit about the design in terms of, you said it's the longest ferry route that's so far been built to be powered by hydrogen. 100 kilometers, is that to Lofoten from Bodø and back again?
No,
is it more then? Or is it
one direction? One direction,
okay. So Are you designing these vessels to be able to refuel both in Bodø and Lofoten, or do you envisage just one? Or is it going to be designed to have the capability to only? So you need to have a round trip capacity.
Yeah, it's not only a round trip capacity. It's as it's built now, it's daily bunkering daily, but it's going up to 3 round trips daily. So it's only bunkering in Bodø area. It will be sophisticated bunkering system developed also to the vessel. So it's to have bunkering on both sides, then you need hydrogen production on both sides and a bunkering system on both sides. So it's much more cost effective to have it in one dedicated place.
And are you looking at compressed hydrogen, or is this liquefied hydrogen?
Yes, that's been a long discussion during this project. I think from the outside, a lot were expecting to see liquefied hydrogen, but we ended up with compressed hydrogen. There is several reasons for this, but commercially, of course, compressed is much more lower in price because it's you don't need the liquefaction stage and so on, but also the simplicity and safety wise, our opinion is that compressed hydrogen is better than for liquid hydrogen in such a vessel.
But the flip side of that, of course, is it's more. You need more space for compressed hydrogen.
Obviously, you need more space, but we avoid the extremely low temperatures, liquid on -253, and as we see it, it's like a double complexity. If you have a leak with the liquid hydrogen, it will firstly, it's more heavy than air, so it's go down. and then it vaporize and go up. So you'll have a double. You have to take care of two different cases. With the compressed, it's more easy. It's going up.
You're listening to the Aronnax podcast from Fathom World. Remember to subscribe. Yes, I am an AI.
Well, just before I go to Peter to talk about the AIP, Torkild, I understand that this isn't the only work you're doing in sort of developing the vessels. And what I found interesting as well in some of the announcements was the fact that you're going to move two of the vessels away from LNG. Now, it seemed like only yesterday that all of the Norwegian ferry operators were being instructed to use LNG, or it was seen as the clean fuel. But already now we're seeing conversions. You're going to be converting two vessels away from LNG. Which vessels are you going to convert, and what are they going to be converted to use?
Well, it's the two vessels that operate on the existing contract, which was signed they started in 2012, 2013. And at that point, the only energy or fuel that was allowed was LNG on this route. Now they in the new tender or the tender that we signed earlier this year, they explicitly said that LNG is not possible to use. It was hydrogen on the main vessels and on the reserve, and it's a big increase in traffic in the summertime. So we contractually we have to put in two additional vessels for the summer traffic, and that's what we are doing with the existing two vessels. We are converting them from LNG to biodiesel, and we'll use them in the summer period, and one of them as a spare vessel for all year around.
So how are you going to convert? The vessels were built to run off of LNG, so they've got the LNG systems on board. Were they built with a dual fuel capability so that you could switch to diesel, or is this, in some ways, it's a retrofit that's got a retro feel to it, because a lot of retrofitting has gone from diesel, to LNG. But you're telling me here that you're effectively, because biodiesel is diesel in its molecular sense, so you're going from LNG to diesel.
Yeah, biodiesel.
I understand it's biodiesel.
It's important.
Yeah, I understand that, but I'm just curious about this process of retrofitting from LNG to biodiesel.
Yeah, it's a little bit different, or the opposite of what major part of the industry are doing. But that's the way it's put together in this contract. And LNG is, for all practical reasons, out in the Norwegian domestic ferry service. So again, we are leaning on Gjermund and his expertise and his colleagues' expertise. So we are removing the whole gas system and not reinstalling, but installing a diesel engine and tanks and the necessary arrangements. These are quite new vessels. They were delivered in 2012, 2013, and they have been operated. So we know they are vessels that fit for this special route.
How long would a vessel normally have service up in the north of the country? What's the sort of length of service you'll find for a ferry in North Norway?
Around 30 years.
Okay. So these would have another 20 years life in them?
Yeah, more or less. As you have you talked to Gjermund also, this is a very special operation. It's Bodø-Lofoten. It's not only the longest and most weather-exposed route for hydrogen. It's the most challenging route as a ferry operation in Norway as such.
Yeah. And again, with the biodiesel, have you started to source the biodiesel? What kind of sources are you looking to get the biodiesel from?
Well, we have vessels operating on biodiesel already, so that's not new to us. We buy biodiesel on the regular contracts and regular suppliers. It's expensive, yeah, but but it's possible to get it. So.
Peter, can I turn to you from an AIP? I want to talk about the AIP that Lloyd's Register has awarded to this ship design. I've spoken to a number of companies that have won AIPs and to class societies that have been issuing AIPs. When you've looked at this design, what were you looking for specifically when it came to issuing an AIP for this vessel?
The main thing we look at is safety for the vessel and the crew. So and we are looking especially towards the containment system and pipelines. In this case, the fuel cell system and also the shutdown system, which are coming together with the design of the vessel. So we're looking at all this together, that this can assure us to have the level of safety that we would expect on a ship of this kind. Especially, we should also say that we are talking about the passenger vessel now and not about the cargo vessel. So that's an additional sensitivity to apply a novel fuel on a passenger vessel.
So an AIP approval in principle is, as the word suggests, an approval in principle of a design. You've looked at the design, you've looked at the flow operations, you've looked at what technology is being proposed on that, maybe gone to Germund and to Torkil to suggest any changes to make it look better on paper. But this is all on paper, well, not some digital paper, I guess is what I'm really saying, because it's all digital these days. But where do you go from there with an AIP? What comes next?
First of all, I'd like to say that the AIP that we have issued to Torghatten Nord is, we must say that we have been sitting around a few days with many people, let's say, in a team's environment, with a lot of dedication around the table to bring up anything which could or would worry us. And to these questions, answers has been given. Of course, there are still components which are also in a final design stage. These components need also to comply with the requirements which are in place according to the IGF code. So it's not that this is a document. It's a document which is supported by a team of people around the table that are committed to bring this vessel in a safe way into the market. So the next step will be to go to final design of certain components which need to come with the necessary certification, but also final approval of the piping system. So we have looked at piping systems on a level of safeties incorporated in the piping systems, but we have not looked at the sizing. So now once the piping system, for example, is submitted, the plan approval surveyors will look at the sizing, and then we are only talking about a certain gas in a certain pipe. So that's normal plan approval work. Also electrical, of course, it needs to be intrinsically safe environment. So once the components are all known and defined, that will go to the plan approval offices, and they will review that information and accept it to be fitted on the vessel. So that's the next step. Then we will have the final approval, and the ship can be built towards these plans. So we are still talking only about the drawings related to the application of the new fuel. The other thing is a conventional plan approval for the vessel, on which also the Norwegian Maritime Authorities will have their saying in this project. In our risk-based certification scheme, we as LR, we have implemented an additional point where we also going to look on how we're going to commission these novel technologies on board of the vessel in a safe way. And also a further step, how we're going to survey them in the long run. Because there is new equipment on board, there is equipment which is not easily to be opened. So we need to find alternative ways to confirm that the equipment which is initially installed on the vessel stays in a good condition on the lifetime of the vessel. So also that those requirements will actually be decided already in advance of the delivery of the vessel. So the owner will have a clear picture what he will have to do in the coming 5, 10, 20, 30 years on the survey requirements of the, in this case, hydrogen components.
Torkild, that reminds me then about the next steps for you as the ship owner. Obviously, you're going to start at some point looking for a yard. You may already have done that, but when you're looking at a shipyard, what sort of considerations do you need to put to them for a novel design like this? Because it can't be just any shipyard that could do a novel design or take the new kind of system. So have you started to look, have you signed a contract with the shipyard yet to build this, and what sort of considerations have you been making as you've been looking for the yard?
First of all, we have not started. We got this approval in principle last week, but we are together with Gjermund in a process now of working with a full specification, and hopefully, or the plan is at least that we, by the end of this year, should be in a position to circulate a full specification to the relevant shipyards. When it comes to what we are looking for, of course. This is new, but it is a new technology, but it's still a ferry. So experience in ferry building is at least one parameter that we are looking at, and the experience we have from the industry, shipyards that are really interested in working together with us on a new technology. I think that it should be interesting for a lot of shipyards, both in Norway and abroad.
And just as a final point, Peter, on the AIP, I've seen recently a lot of announcements about AIPs, whether it's for the equipment, for a vessel design, a fuel system. It must be a very busy time as a class society to be looking at AIPs. You must have quite a few coming up. But what do you think this means about the industry?
I think this means that at least that there is a lot of interest to go forward with novel technologies in order to reduce the emissions. And I think and I sincerely hope the awareness is there that we really need to continue on this and to collaborate. So I think what AIP says that there is collaboration between people, and we are looking at designs which we believe have a lifetime ahead of them. What is also important is that we by doing this approval in principles and by having a project like this, that our knowledge will increase, and we will come to more viable solutions in the far future by sitting around the table, collaborate, exchange experience, and building these kind of projects, which is actually, in my opinion, very hopeful. And I said this before, any kilogram of CO2 which is not emitted is a good kilogram. So that's why we all classification societies, but I can speak for Lloyd's, we really support this approach of approvals in principle. And again, as I said earlier, the approval in principle that was delivered to Torghatten Nord, I was in the risk assessment. I was also in the risk assessment of others. So there is, you feel and you see there is really commitment on any approval in principle from the people around the table to find solutions to reduce emissions. And I think that's a good thing. And it may now still be an environmental choice to do this, but I think there will be a days, and I think the Norwegian country is very well situated for that. There may be days that it's not longer an environmental choice, but that going for these kind of fuels becomes a commercial choice. And then I think it's only gonna lift up. The last thing I want to say is, as Torkild just said, he is trading together with a lot of Norwegian companies around the coast, and they are applying. I think Norwegian country is a forerunner on these kind of projects, Although I must say also Belgium is doing its bit, but never mind. I think what you can see is you can project trades around coast, whether it's the Norwegian coast, you can project that on many coasts in the world. So coastal trading will be one of the earlier deployers of novel energy supplies on board of ships.
Peter, and to Geirmund and Torkild, thank you very much for coming on to the Aranex podcast. It's been great to talk to you about another AIP, another design for Norwegian ship design, Geirmund, and another feather in the cap for the Norwegian ferry industry there, Torkild. I think. Thank you very much for your time. That's it for this episode of the Aranex podcast. Don't forget to press subscribe to get this into your podcast flow, and go to the fathom.world news site and you can then subscribe to our regular newsletter. Thank you for all.